And I don't remember how I got started, but I do remember the time that I kind of went semi-pro. I was 8 years old, I was walking past my parents' bedroom, the door was open, and the window, I guess, was clearly open as well, because from the top of my father's dresser blew a $20 bill. And as it floated to the ground, and it touched the ground, I had one word in my mind: mine. And I don't know why, clearly. I mean, about a year before, my grandfather had introduced me to cash bribery. He did very effectively, because I was late all the time for school. You know, the principal didn't work talking to me, my parents didn't work, nothing worked, and then he offered me a crisp $1 bill for every time I could get to school on time. And I made it to $21. And I guess beyond that point, I was kind of like, well, there's infinity beyond that. To my like 8-year-old mind, it was like, I can't keep this up, what, forever? So I accepted $21. So 20 and money, it was just, so I saw that happen, and it was on the ground. I assumed, I guess it was free. So it was like, I went up, grabbed it, slipped it in my pocket, and I knew that I would have to come up with a story. I didn't have a paper route. I didn't have any money coming in outside of birthday cards. It was nowhere near my birthday, so I had to have a story, a simple story. So, you know, I didn't have that big skill in telling adults big lies, so it was like I was walking home from school and found it in a field. Figuring, as is true, I found out later in life, the simpler the lie, the more effective you can tell it. And I told them both that, and they were like, oh, really? Because this is like $1978, so $20 was missed at that point. And they were both, okay, great, sit down. And they both went at me and interrogated me. My mom was good at it. My dad had been a cop for 7 years by that point. And I was, oh, okay, I really want this $20 though. I had my mission, I had my goal, I stuck to it. By the end, they couldn't shake me. And I think they were a little concerned, they were worried. It was like, our son is a liar, we've got to do something drastic. So my dad said, okay, so you found the $20. How about we fill out a police report? And somehow, I don't know who it was, but a police officer showed up in full uniform. And he had him there really quickly and sat across the kitchen table. Now, you'd think this would be an opportunity for, a good, a teachable moment where, as a kid, you learn about the social contract and, where you fit into it and how not to break it, because this is what happens. But accidentally, my parents taught me the exact opposite. I saw this as a dare to be great situation. And I sat down and I sold it. I didn't know what I was selling. I don't know if I was selling it effectively, but I stuck by my story. And this gruff, brush-cutted cop, he couldn't shake me. So they both got up. My dad was sitting there too, and went out and was like, that's that, it's my $20. Now, I didn't really get to keep it. They took it for me and put it in my bank account, but still in my mind I was like, I can lie to cops. I've got a superpower now. This is something I can use. I'm sure of it, right? And, I didn't actually seek out lies. I just sort of let them happen, right? If they came to me, I would tell them, but I wouldn't go looking for lies. And eventually I became interested in applied lies or practical lies as I thought of manipulation. So I would manipulate other people, my family members, my brother and sister. Easy, they were great early examples. But to get what I wanted, I would say and do things, and I could sell it because I wouldn't twitch or blink. I would sell the story. And if it escalated, I would tell a bigger lie. And if I ran out of lies and was cornered, I would deliver the waterworks. I would do like the death scene from Camille. It was just like, I was so regretful, and the tears would come. And I could do that as a child. It was very effective. Never really got in any trouble, and in fact freaked people out over it. I had a grade 7 teacher that took my mother aside and was like, I saw him not do his homework and assignment. Then he told me he had and delivered tears, and for a second he made me doubt what I saw. There's something wrong with him. And okay, at the time it was like my mom came home and told me that. She didn't do anything about it, but it was like, there's something wrong with me. So, eventually time went on, and I hit my teens, and I discovered a new word. Sociopath. And I thought, this is kind of a cool word. I mean, the dictionary. So a dictionary definition was, at the time, a person whose behavior is antisocial and who lacks a sense of moral responsibility or social conscience. Now, I didn't think of myself as antisocial, so clearly I didn't understand what the word meant. And certainly at the time I had come to terms with the fact that I had a very flexible sense of what was right and what was wrong, and what was situationally justified. And I was living in the suburbs. I was living in Bramalea, which was this antiseptic fake place, and I was this like kid wandering around this antiseptic suburb, so it was like, how am I going to have a social conscience? It was like, that's not in there. So I was like, all right, 2 out of 3. I think I might be a sociopath. And like, I knew I wasn't a psychopath because I went through all the psychopaths that I knew at the time. It was like, you know, we'd been reading Othello. It was like, Iago, not him. Although I did respect his work, right? And Norman Bates, not him. Travis Bickle, and then in real life, it's like at the time it was Ted Bundy, Clifford Olson. It was like all these psychopaths. That's not my tribe. That's not who I'm a part of, right? But I had an idea in my head that sociopath was different. It was like non-violent, more clever psychopath, and it was like all of the machinations and tall tales and none of the stabbing. And it was like Tom Sawyer. I'd read that. It was like Tom Sawyer was convincing the other boys and having them all to have fun painting the fence while he ate their apple. And it was like, that's what I want to be. That's great, that manipulation. Now, it was no perfect definition, but it was the one they accepted. I was trying to figure out who I was in my teens. That was the way I was going to go it. Now, when I hit university in my 20s, I refined it to an art. And I didn't learn much in university. But after 4 years and a film degree, I managed to only do 4 essays and 4 unfinished screenplays. So by the end of it, it was like I wanted to write a book about how to get through university on the absolute minimum amount of effort possible. And it had all to do with manipulating professors and working the system. It was like I had figured out something, not what you're supposed to learn in university, but something more valuable possibly. Now, I started seeing everybody's defenses like they were a first-person shooter video game. It was like, how do I get to the next level, and how do I win them? And I started to joke. It's like, yeah, I'm a sociopath, but don't worry. I'm such a lazy sociopath that I'm so tired and over taking your wallet, your job, your girlfriend, your life. It's like, I'm totally not going to do that. I am so lazy. And it was a joke that I told myself that, you know, eventually became the truth. It was like, I didn't even really know what the word meant, but this is how I was living it. Now, when I went to go look up the medical terms, it was like psychopath, which it's associated to, first came on the scene in 1880, and it's from 2 words. It's from psyche, Greek, and pathos, Greek, soul and suffering. So it was like suffering souls. Psychopaths are suffering souls. That's how that word came about. But sociopath came out in the 1930s, and an American psychiatrist came up with it, and it was just kind of like, we want to change it. We want to make it our own. So we're calling them sociopaths now. And it didn't last, because in like 1970, they switched it to something else, general antisocial personality disorder. Now, if you go to the DSM-5 right now, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which I encourage you to find online and read as much as you can, because if you read enough, you will find yourself in there. I assure you. The American Psychiatric Association introduced a new phrase, which we're trying out right now, antisocial/psychopathic disorder. So that's where it's at right now. And supposedly if your personality features become a disorder, if there's a failure for you to adapt them to the world around you in your life. So antisocial psychopathic types have inflated grandiosity and a pervasive pattern of taking advantage of other people. I was like, I think this is it. I think I'm onto something. Now, they also had a checklist. They had like 9 points that if you got 5 out of the 9, then you're probably that. So I went through them. It was like 1, callousness. I was like, no, not really. 2, aggression. I was like, no, not really. It was like 3, manipulativeness. It was like, oh yeah, manipulative, definitely that. Hostility. No, not that. Deceitfulness. Yeah, okay, yeah. Narcissism. It was like, well, it could be argued. It's like maybe a half point there. Impulsivity, again, like half point. There's some of it there, but not like, it's not strong and virulent. Recklessness. I was like, no, not really. And irresponsibility. It was like, well, I pay back my student loans, but I'm pretty much late all the time. So it seemed like a balance of a half point there too, right? So 4 out of 9. I failed. clinically, by that standard and by that judgment, I'm not a psychopath, I'm not a sociopath. And that kind of made me sad, but then I started to realize, okay, that's clinically, that's only clinically, right? It was like, spiritually, you could still be a sociopath. You know, you could still encourage the behaviors that the adapted skills that you were using your whole life, and perhaps you could consider yourself more of a